If you are one of those souls who feels drained after certain encounters, who has been called overly sensitive, labeled as dramatic or too emotional, or even questioned whether you were imagining the exhaustion that follows specific people in your life, then this video is exactly for you. If you understand the silent weight that exists in carrying a permeable heart through a world filled with souls who take without giving, who speak without truly listening, who demand your presence without ever reciprocating the energy you pour into them. But you feel it deeply, and you have felt it for a very long time, perhaps since childhood, when you first noticed that some people left you feeling lighter, while others left you feeling hollowed out from the inside. I once met someone who described it perfectly, someone whose words still resonate in my mind years later. She told me that after visiting her own family, after spending just a few hours in their presence, she would need 3 full days of solitude, just to feel like herself again, just to recover the sense of her own center. She said something that has stayed with me ever since. People think I am weak because I need to recover from them. But the truth is, my soul knows when it is being emptied, when it is being drained, when it is giving far more than it is receiving. That was when I truly understood what Whitman meant when he spoke of souls that see too much, souls that perceive the invisible currents moving between human beings, the silent exchanges of energy that most people never notice or acknowledge because they are too numb or too defended to feel them. Today, I'm going to reveal Whitman's spiritual vision about why this sensitivity to toxic souls is not a flaw in your character, not a weakness to be overcome, but a rare and profound capacity that allows you to navigate the world with deeper wisdom than those who stumble blindly through their relationships. I will show you how understanding this sensitivity can transform the entire way you perceive your own spiritual boundaries, your own right to protect the sacred space of your inner life, and your own permission to choose carefully who gets access to your precious energy. This is not about becoming cold or closed off to the world. This is not about building walls so high that no one can reach you. This is about recognizing, with the clarity that Whitman celebrated throughout his work, that your soul has a natural instinct to protect itself from certain energies, from certain patterns, from certain people whose presence consistently depletes rather than nourishes you, and that honoring this instinct is one of the deepest acts of self-love and self-respect you will ever practice in your lifetime. Whitman understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to articulate clearly, only beginning to study scientifically, only beginning to validate after centuries of spiritual teachers saying the same thing in different words. He understood that we are not separate islands of consciousness floating alone in a vast ocean of solitude, but deeply interconnected beings who exchange energy, emotion, thought, and spiritual presence with everyone we encounter, whether we are conscious of these exchanges or not. He wrote about the electric connection between souls, about the way one person's despair could dim the light in another person's eyes, about the way joy could spread like sunrise across the faces of strangers walking past each other on busy city streets. He knew that some souls give freely and openly, pouring their light into the world without keeping score or demanding repayment, while others, whether consciously or unconsciously, drain the life force from those around them like invisible vampires feeding on energy instead of blood. This is not moral judgment traditionally. This is not about dividing people into good and evil categories. This is spiritual observation based on direct experience, on paying attention to what actually happens in your body and your heart when you spend time with different people. There are 6 types of toxic souls that Whitman would have recognized immediately in his wanderings through the crowds and quiet places of the world. 6 patterns of being that consistently deplete the energy of sensitive, aware individuals who have not yet learned to protect themselves adequately. Understanding these patterns is not about labeling people or cutting everyone out of your life in a paranoid frenzy of self-protection. It is about developing what Whitman called the wisdom of discernment, The ability to recognize when a soul is offering genuine connection and when a soul is simply taking from your well without ever refilling it, without ever offering anything of real substance in return. The first toxic soul is the one Whitman might have called the perpetual storm, the person who lives in constant crisis, whose life is always on the edge of collapse, who needs rescue every single day, but never actually changes anything about their situation, no matter how much help they receive. They call you in the middle of the night with emergencies that somehow only you can solve. They demand your emotional presence during your own moments of need, oblivious to the fact that you might be struggling too. They describe their suffering in vivid, exhausting detail, painting pictures of their pain so compelling that you feel guilty for having any problems of your own. And the moment you offer a solution, the moment you suggest a concrete step they could take to improve their situation, they explain with great conviction why it will not work, why their situation is uniquely impossible, why they are trapped beyond any hope of change. What makes this soul particularly draining is not the crisis itself, because we all go through difficult times when we need extra support from those who love us. What makes it toxic is the refusal to grow from it, the refusal to take responsibility, the refusal to see their own role in creating and perpetuating the chaos that surrounds them. Whitman understood suffering deeply and intimately. He volunteered in hospitals during the Civil War and sat with dying soldiers, holding their hands and writing letters to their families, bearing witness to pain that would have broken most people. But he also understood the profound difference between someone moving through suffering toward growth and someone who had made suffering their permanent identity, their calling card, their way of manipulating others into endless caretaking. The perpetual storm does not want solutions despite claiming otherwise. They want an audience. They want your energy, your worry, your constant attention focused on their drama. And if you try to step back, if you try to create some distance for your own well-being, they will create a new emergency specifically designed to pull you back in, to remind you that they need you, to make you feel guilty for even thinking about your own needs. Your soul knows this pattern instinctively. It recognizes the exhaustion that follows every conversation, the way you feel emptied rather than connected after spending time with them, the way you dread seeing their name appear on your phone screen because you know what is coming. The second toxic soul is what I call the silent vampire, and this one is particularly insidious because they often appear charming, agreeable, and fully present. This person does not create drama or crisis in any obvious way. They do not make scenes or demands. They show up consistently and they seem engaged when you talk. But when you are with them, you notice something strange happening, something subtle that you might not even be able to name at first. You do all the talking. You share your dreams, your fears, your stories, your struggles, your triumphs. They nod and smile and offer just enough response to keep you sharing, just enough feedback to make you feel heard. But they never reciprocate in any meaningful way. They never reveal themselves. They never offer their own vulnerability or depth. They never take the risk of being truly seen. Whitman celebrated what he called the democratic exchange of souls, the idea that true connection requires mutual openness, mutual risk, mutual giving and receiving in a balanced flow of energy. The silent vampire violates this sacred principle completely. They take your emotional openness, your stories, your energy, your trust, and they give nothing real in return, nothing of substance, nothing that creates actual intimacy or connection. You leave every encounter feeling strangely exposed, as if you shared too much, even though they actively encouraged you to share, even though they asked questions that pulled more information out of you. This is not introversion or shyness. Introverts can be profoundly generous with their inner worlds when they trust someone, when they feel safe enough to open up. This is something else entirely, something more calculated even unconsciously. This is energetic theft disguised as listening, extraction disguised as interest. The third toxic soul is the critic who never builds, the person who can find the flaw in everything you do, every dream you share, every risk you consider taking. Whitman had a name for this type of person, though he used different language. He called them the people who stand outside the arena, who mock those who dare to create and risk and fail, who tear down with clever words but never risk creating anything themselves, never put their own work or dreams or vulnerabilities on the line. You know this person in your life, they can find the problem in every plan you make. They can explain in great detail why your idea will not work, why your joy is naive and childish, why your hope is foolish and unrealistic. They are intelligent, often highly articulate and convincing, and they make you feel small and stupid without ever raising their voice or being obviously cruel. What makes this soul toxic is not honest feedback or constructive criticism. Whitman valued genuine critique from those who also dared to create and risk and fail, who had skin in the game themselves. What makes this soul toxic is that they derive their energy, their sense of power and importance from diminishing others. They feel powerful when you feel small. They feel intelligent when you feel foolish. They feed directly on your self-doubt like it is their primary source of nutrition. And the cruelest part, the part that makes this pattern particularly damaging, is that they often target sensitive, creative souls precisely because those souls are most vulnerable to criticism, most likely to internalize the judgment and give up. Your soul knows the difference between criticism offered in love, offered to help you grow and improve, and criticism offered as a weapon, offered to keep you small and safe and non-threatening. Trust that knowing completely. Let me pause here for a moment and ask you something directly, something intimate about these toxic souls we're exploring together, something that might feel vulnerable to answer, but I promise you are safe here. When was the first time you realized that feeling drained after certain encounters was not your weakness or oversensitivity, but your soul's way of protecting you, of showing you a truth that your mind might not want to accept because it conflicts with what you have been taught about kindness and tolerance and giving people chances? Many people have never had permission to admit what they feel about these energetic dynamics because almost no one talks about them without judgment, without making you feel guilty for having boundaries, without suggesting that if you were truly spiritual, you would be able to handle anything and anyone. But here, in this space, you are understood completely. Your sensitivity is honored. Your exhaustion is valid. Your need for protection is sacred. Your comment might be exactly what another person needs to read to realize there is nothing wrong with them, that this sensitivity is actually a form of spiritual sight that allows you to navigate relationships with wisdom. If you want, copy and paste this in the comments, "I feel this because my soul sees more than others realize." Or complete this sentence in your own words. "For me, recognizing toxic souls means keeping my energy sacred and available for the spaces that truly nourish me." Take a breath right now, a real breath, deep into your belly. Feel for a moment what your soul wants to say about this, what truth is rising up in you as you listen. If you feel moved to share, the comments are your safe space, your community, your place to be witnessed without judgment. But if you prefer to hold this awareness in silence, to keep it private and protected, that is equally sacred and equally valid. That is the purest form of self-respect, knowing when to speak and when to keep your truth close. Now let us continue exploring these patterns with even deeper understanding and compassion for what you have endured. The fourth toxic soul is the shapeshifter who mirrors rather than relates, who has no stable center of their own. Whitman spoke famously of containing multitudes, of being large and contradictory and endlessly varied in his interests and passions and ways of being in the world. But the shapeshifter takes this to a pathological extreme that has nothing to do with genuine complexity or growth. They have no stable center, no core identity, no authentic self that remains consistent across different contexts. They become whoever you need them to be in the moment, whatever will gain them access to your energy, your resources, your trust. If you love art, they suddenly discover a deep passion for art they never mentioned before. If you value spirituality, they claim to have profound spiritual practices and experiences. If you express anger at injustice, they become righteously angry too, matching your intensity perfectly. At first, this feels like perfect compatibility, like finding your twin soul, like meeting someone who finally understands you completely. But over time, you realize something deeply unsettling, something that makes your skin crawl, even though you cannot quite articulate why. You have no idea who they actually are beneath the mask. You cannot predict their values or their reactions because they change based on who they are with and what they want to get from that person. This is not growth or evolution or learning from different people. This is energetic camouflage, mimicry designed to disarm your natural defenses. Whitman celebrated authenticity above almost everything else in his writing and his life. He believed that each soul had a unique song to sing, a distinctive voice that belonged to them alone, and that pretending to be something other than yourself was a form of spiritual death, a betrayal of your own divine nature. The shapeshifter drains your energy because you can never fully relax around them, never fully trust what they show you. You are always unconsciously scanning for who they really are underneath the mirror they hold up, doing double the emotional work, trying to connect with them while also trying to figure out if there is a real person there to connect with at all. The fifth toxic soul is the wound collector who weaponizes their pain, who uses their suffering as both a shield and a sword. Everyone carries wounds from their past. Everyone has pain they are working to heal. Whitman knew this intimately, wrote about it with profound compassion, understood that suffering is an inescapable part of the human journey that connects us all. But the wound collector does something different with their pain, something that transforms it from a teacher into a weapon. They gather evidence of every hurt, every slight, every disappointment, every betrayal, real or perceived, and they use these wounds to justify their behavior toward others. They use their pain to explain why they cannot be expected to treat others with basic kindness or consideration. They use their trauma as a get-out-of-jail-free card for cruelty, manipulation, and boundary violations. They position themselves as perpetual victims while simultaneously victimizing those around them, blind to the contradiction. If you try to set a boundary with them, they remind you of their suffering and make you feel cruel for having needs. If you express hurt at their behavior, they immediately list all the ways their pain is greater than yours, turning every conversation into a competition of suffering. What makes this soul particularly exhausting is that you cannot win any interaction with them. Compassion is met with escalation of their victim narrative. Boundaries are met with accusations of abandonment or betrayal. Honest conversation about how their behavior affects you is met with a flood of historical grievances designed to make you feel guilty for bringing anything up. Whitman understood that genuine healing requires us to move through our pain, to learn from it, to let it transform us rather than define us forever. The wound collector refuses this journey completely. They have made their identity from their suffering, built their entire personality around their wounds, and they need you to keep acknowledging it, keep accommodating it, keep sacrificing your own needs to their endless pain without ever expecting them to take responsibility for their healing. Your soul recognizes this pattern because it leaves you feeling guilty for having needs at all, for expecting mutuality, for wanting anything other than to endlessly absorb their wounds without ever tending to your own. The sixth toxic soul, and perhaps the most dangerous because they are the hardest to recognize initially, is the light stealer who positions themselves as your spiritual guide, your teacher, your enlightened friend. This person speaks the language of enlightenment fluently. They talk about energy and consciousness and higher purpose. They quote spiritual teachers and ancient wisdom traditions. They seem to understand the deeper dimensions of life that most people miss completely. And at first, You feel profoundly grateful to have found someone who understands, someone who can speak to your soul in its own language, someone who validates your spiritual seeking. But slowly, if you pay attention, you notice a disturbing pattern emerging. Every conversation somehow becomes about their insights, their awakening, their spiritual superiority. They offer guidance, but it always positions you as less evolved, less aware, less developed than they are. They create a subtle hierarchy where they are always the teacher and you are always the student, even in areas where you have deep knowledge and experience of your own. What makes this soul toxic is the betrayal of spiritual language itself, the way they weaponize the vocabulary of love and growth to maintain power and control over others. They frame your legitimate concerns about their behavior as ego or resistance to growth. They suggest that if you were truly evolved, if you were really on the path, you would not feel hurt by the things they say or do. Whitman would have seen through this immediately and completely. He believed that genuine spiritual connection is democratic, mutual, open, that we all contain the divine spark equally. He believed that no soul is higher or lower than another in the ultimate sense, that hierarchy itself is an illusion that prevents real connection. The light stealer violates this fundamental principle. They drain your energy by making you constantly question your own perceptions, your own worth, your own spiritual validity, keeping you off balance and dependent on their approval. Now that we have named these 6 souls, these 6 patterns that drain the life force from sensitive, aware beings who have not learned to protect themselves, let us talk about the deeper spiritual work that Whitman would have prescribed for healing and protection. Because recognition is only the beginning of the journey, only the first step on a longer path. The real question, the question that determines whether this knowledge transforms your life or just becomes more information you carry, is what do we do with this knowledge? How do we protect our energy without becoming closed and bitter and suspicious of everyone? How do we maintain healthy boundaries without losing our capacity for connection and compassion? How do we honor our sensitivity without letting it isolate us completely? Whitman's answer, woven throughout his poetry and his life, would be what he called the sovereignty of the self. This is the understanding that your soul has its own territory, its own borders, its own sacred space that no one has the right to violate without your permission. Just as a country protects its borders, not out of hatred for other nations, but out of responsibility to its own people, out of the recognition that resources are finite and must be allocated wisely, you must protect your energetic borders not out of hatred for others, but out of responsibility to your own soul, out of recognition that your energy is precious and limited and must be given consciously rather than drained unconsciously. This means learning to recognize the signs of energetic depletion quickly and clearly, developing what might be called spiritual literacy about your own energy system. When you leave an encounter feeling exhausted rather than energized, that is information worth noting. When you find yourself dreading time with someone you theoretically care about, that is your soul speaking clearly. When you notice yourself becoming smaller, quieter, less yourself around certain people, when you feel the need to hide parts of yourself or edit your truth to avoid their judgment or demands, that is your intuition telling you something important about this relationship. Your body and your soul are constantly sending you signals about who is safe and who is draining, who nourishes you and who depletes you. The work is to trust these signals, even when your mind argues against them with logic and obligations, even when the person has done nothing obviously wrong that you could point to and name, even when you feel guilty for feeling what you feel because you have been taught that good people are endlessly tolerant and accepting. Whitman trusted his bodily knowing, his instinctual responses, his gut feelings about people and situations. He understood that the soul has a wisdom that precedes rational analysis, that sometimes you know something is wrong before you can articulate why. The challenge most sensitive souls face is that we have been trained from childhood to override our instincts in service of social harmony, politeness, family loyalty, or religious obligation. We have been taught that setting boundaries is selfish, that protecting our energy is unkind, that we should endlessly accommodate others regardless of the cost to ourselves. This training serves those who drain energy perfectly. It does not serve those who give it freely and generously. Whitman would say that protecting your energy is not selfish in any meaningful sense of that word. It is sacred responsibility, spiritual stewardship of the gift you have been given. Because when your energy is depleted, when your light has been drained by those who take without giving, you have nothing left to give to those who truly deserve your presence, your love, your time, your attention. You cannot pour from an empty cup, as the saying goes. But more than that, you cannot shine your light into the world when someone else has stolen it, when you have given it away to people who never valued it properly. The practical work of protecting your energy begins with what I call the 3 circles of presence, a framework for understanding who deserves what level of access to you. The innermost circle contains the people who energize you, who meet you with mutuality and reciprocity, who celebrate your light rather than trying to dim it or exploit it. These are the people Whitman would have called your true companions on the open road, the souls who walk beside you rather than in front of you or behind you. They deserve your full presence, your vulnerability, your time, your energy given freely and joyfully. Guard this circle carefully and consciously. Not everyone gets to be here, and that is not cruelty or judgment. That is wisdom, that is discernment, that is love for yourself and for them. The middle circle contains people you care about, but who do not energize you in any particular way. They are neutral. They are colleagues, acquaintances, friendly faces in your life who neither drain nor fill you. These people deserve your kindness and your professionalism, your politeness and your respect, but they do not deserve unlimited access to your inner world, to your deepest thoughts and feelings and dreams. You can be warm without being open. You can be friendly without being vulnerable. You can care about them without giving them everything. The outer circle contains the toxic souls, the 6 types we have named today, and any others whose patterns you recognize in your own life. These people deserve your compassion from a distance. They deserve your hope that they will heal and grow and change. They deserve your prayers or good thoughts or whatever aligns with your spiritual practice and values. But they do not deserve your presence. They do not deserve your energy. They do not deserve access to your peace, your joy, your sacred inner space. Setting this boundary is not punishment for them. It is protection for you. Now let us talk about the common mistakes that sensitive souls make when trying to protect their energy from toxic patterns. Mistakes that keep them trapped in depleting relationships far longer than necessary. The first mistake is thinking that you can fix them, that if you just love them enough, or support them enough, or explain things clearly enough, they will change. You cannot fix another person. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. Whitman understood that each soul has its own journey, its own timing, its own lessons to learn through direct experience. You are not responsible for another person's healing or growth. You are only responsible for your own path. The second mistake is explaining yourself endlessly, trying to make them understand why you need distance, why their behavior hurts you, why you cannot continue the relationship as it has been. Toxic souls rarely accept your reasons because accepting them would require acknowledging their own behavior and taking responsibility for it. You do not need their permission to protect yourself. You do not need their understanding or approval. You simply need to honor your own knowing and act on it. The third mistake is maintaining connection out of guilt or obligation, staying in relationships that drain you because you share history or blood or promises made long ago. Perhaps they are family members you have known your whole life. Perhaps you have decades of history together. Perhaps they are going through a particularly difficult time, and you feel responsible for supporting them. None of these facts obligate you to sacrifice your own well-being indefinitely. Whitman would say that your first obligation, your primary spiritual responsibility, is to your own soul. Everything else flows from that foundation, or it does not flow at all. The fourth mistake is thinking that setting boundaries means becoming cold or closed, building walls so high that no one can reach you, losing your capacity for connection and love. It does not mean that at all. It means becoming discerning about who you let in. It means saving your warmth for those who will not exploit it. It means opening your heart fully to those who treat it with care and reverence. This is not cynicism or hardness. This is wisdom earned through painful experience. The fifth mistake is trying to do this work without support, without people in your innermost circle who understand what you are doing and why it matters. Protecting your energy from toxic souls is hard work, especially in the beginning when you are breaking old patterns and facing guilt and pushback from those who benefited from your lack of boundaries. You need people who understand this work, who support your boundaries, who remind you of your worth when guilt tries to pull you back into depleting patterns. Find these people, cherish them. Let them help you stay strong when your resolve weakens. As we begin to close this exploration and bring all these threads together, I want to leave you with a clear and complete understanding of what Whitman saw. He saw the world as a vast democracy of souls, each one equally valuable in the cosmic sense, each one containing infinite depths and possibilities waiting to be realized. But he also understood that this democracy requires boundaries and discernment. He understood that some souls are ready for deep connection and mutual exchange, while others are not, and pretending otherwise serves no one. He understood that protecting your energy is not about judging others as bad or wrong or evil. It is simply about honoring what is actually true in your experience, rather than what you wish was true. When you recognize a toxic soul in your life, when you feel your energy being drained consistently, when you notice the patterns we have named today showing up again and again, you are not being judgmental or unkind. You are being honest with yourself. You are seeing what is actually happening rather than what you wish was happening or what you have been told should be happening. And this honesty, this willingness to see clearly even when it is uncomfortable or goes against everything you have been taught about unconditional love and acceptance, is one of the most important spiritual capacities you can develop in your lifetime. Your sensitivity to energy, your ability to feel when someone is taking rather than exchanging, your exhaustion after certain encounters, these are not weaknesses requiring correction. These are not flaws in your character that need to be fixed through more spiritual practice or more personal development. These are signs that your soul is awake, aware, protective of its own sacred space in a world that constantly tries to violate that space. Whitman would celebrate this sensitivity. He would tell you that your boundaries are beautiful expressions of self-love. He would tell you that your discernment is divine wisdom operating through you. So here is what I want you to carry with you as you leave this reflection and return to your life with its relationships and demands and complexities. You do not owe anyone unlimited access to your energy simply because they exist, or because you share history, or because they claim to need you. You do not have to explain or justify your boundaries to people who would not respect them anyway, who would use your explanations as ammunition against you. You do not have to keep giving and giving and giving to people who only know how to take and never learned reciprocity. You do not have to feel guilty for protecting the light inside you, for guarding your peace, for choosing carefully who gets close to your heart. You have permission, complete and total permission, divine permission if you need that language, soul permission if that resonates more deeply, to surround yourself only with those who treat your energy as the sacred gift it truly is. You have permission to walk away from the perpetual storm, the silent vampire, the critic who never builds, the shapeshifter with no center, the wound collector who weaponizes pain, and the light stealer who pretends to guide you. You have permission to choose peace over chaos, mutuality over depletion, truth over obligation, love for yourself over loyalty to those who drain you. This is not selfishness in any negative sense. This is self-love in its highest and most holy form. This is what Whitman meant when he celebrated the sovereignty of the individual soul, when he wrote about the right of each person to determine their own path and protect their own sacred space. If something in this reflection about recognizing and protecting yourself from toxic souls has touched that quiet space inside you, that space that few people understand or acknowledge, that space that has always known it needed protection but felt guilty for wanting it, then this is the right place for you to remain and grow. I invite you with deep respect, not as someone who teaches from above, but as someone who walks beside you on this difficult path. By subscribing to this channel, you do not just receive more videos in your feed, you receive access to a space where protecting your energy is not seen as weakness or selfishness, but as spiritual wisdom and sacred responsibility. I know deeply that living with this sensitivity to toxic patterns in a world that often demands endless accommodation and boundary violation can be utterly exhausting, can make you question your own sanity sometimes. Here in this community, you do not need to explain yourself or justify your needs. Here, your boundaries are honored and celebrated. Here, your instincts are trusted as the voice of your soul speaking truth. When you subscribe, you join a circle of souls who feel the world with rare depth and clarity, who understand that connection without boundaries is not real love, but self-abandonment and eventual resentment, who find deep meaning in reflections like this one. I have studied Whitman for many years now, not to accumulate knowledge or impress others, but to feel more clearly what he felt, to see what he saw, to understand how to live with an open heart in a world that is not always safe. And I share these insights with you because I'm also learning every single day what it means to honor my own energy while remaining genuinely open to connection with those who have earned that trust. What you have discovered here in these words is only the beginning of a much longer journey of reclaiming your sovereignty. If you wish to continue exploring the spiritual truth behind protecting your sacred space, behind recognizing toxic patterns before they drain you completely, behind building a life surrounded by souls who nourish rather than deplete you, I invite you to subscribe and walk this path together with others who understand. And if this video has spoken directly to your soul, if you felt recognized and understood and validated in these words in a way that feels rare and precious, write in the comments this simple truth: my soul knows when it is being emptied, and I honor that knowing now. Your words might be exactly the permission another sensitive soul needs to finally protect their own light without guilt or shame.